I need to do what will make me feel ready. Learn stuff because you're interested in it. If you treat everything as like a checkbox that has to be done, there's so much that'll overwhelm you in uni.
All right. Well, Pranav, a very warm welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you here and really excited to delve into a bit about your story. You've had some incredible results in your journey into medicine, and you're now in your second year of Monash Medicine, which is an incredible achievement and very, very exciting. To start off, can you tell me a little bit about how that's going and what life's like for you at the moment?
Yeah, it's been really good. So currently, of course, in second year at Monash, I'm doing like medicine as well as for like work, a lot of tutoring and like resource creation for content. So in terms of medicine, of course, it's like going well, very hectic, a lot more content compared to first year, I'd say this year. But I'm really appreciating the structure and the detail that we get into with a lot of stuff like anatomy this year. And I'd say like biggest thing I'm really looking forward to is that we've got our first like placement on-site stuff coming up in a few weeks as well. So really looking forward to putting into practice a lot of the stuff we've been learning so far. And yeah, so that's where life's at, balancing like medicine, work, and also finding some time for myself.
Sure. Okay. So with the placement you're doing in a couple of weeks' time, where is that? What does that look like for that week?
So we're going out for a rural placement to Mildura for a week. So I think Mildura is pretty far up north, so the uni's going to be flying us out. So going with like again like a couple other peers, going there for a week, just living together, living in the hospital, and just like getting to put together a lot of like a currently very basic understanding of medicine, but getting to put it into practice a little bit, see how like the hospital system works, give our input with a couple of the GPs and learn like on the job a little bit instead of being in the classroom.
I think it's particularly good that it's rural as well for a first experience because next year when you go to, I mean, maybe you'll be doing rural placement, but next year when you go as well, you can kind of compare them. And that's what I found with my rural week as well. Last year I was going, okay, I can see all these differences now that I'm in a metro hospital and see all these differences between them as well. Great. Okay. So what's been the best thing that you found so far in sort of uni life or medicine as well specifically?
I'd say one of the best is, I think the balance between the like specificity and the breadth of topics you cover, where if you think of it, like medicine is a very specific degree in the sense that like you're fully honed in on stuff relating to the human body. You're not doing anything like maths, you're not doing any English, you're not doing any basic sciences compared to a lot of other degrees.
Complain about it,
but like there's some maths, but it's like, it's, I guess, like not the depth that you'd have in high school where you have a lot more like breadth in the topics you cover. But then, so it's focused in that way, like everything goes towards the same goal. But then within that like one goal or within that one field, there's still like so many different paths to it. There's like microbiology, there's the physiology, there's the anatomy behind it specifically. And I think thinking about the ways in which like we can specialize in whatever we want from this, there's so many different angles we can take, like so many different things that are like my favorites, things that I don't enjoy as much. And just that like uniqueness to like delving into something so much further than we get to in high school, I think that's what I've enjoyed the most so far.
When I actually started at Monash, they used a great analogy on orientation day. I don't know if you had the same one of like the ocean, like world map.
I can't recall it, but that's like sounds like it works pretty well.
Yeah, it's sort of like your inclination is that you want to like go really deep in some topics, but you need to have a good broad sort of world map view rather than just getting really specific to one thing. And like you said, pharmacology, microbiology, anatomy, all these different things. And within anatomy, there's all these different things as well. So there's a lot to do. And next year as well, when you start thinking about, the rotations you're doing in the hospital, even rural placement as well, you'll probably get, like you said, GP, a few other things as well. One of the great things that I've heard a lot of doctors say to me is, well, it's kind of a diagnosis by exclusion in terms of what you want to do, and going through and going, well, not only do I just like this, but I also really don't like this. And you kind of know early on which things you don't like and seeing them differently from the classroom as well. So as a follow-up to that, what's been the most difficult thing, most challenging thing about moving into uni?
Most challenging, I think definitely just because like there's so much breadth, there's so much different stuff going on. It's like keeping on top of like all the different things with how student-led, how individually led it is there. So there's like all the initiatives on you. It's on you to like keep up with stuff, to learn stuff. But it's like both in the time management sense, but also especially I think in the content learning sense, where like VC is so structured. There's like the study design, like a lot of people study design merchants. They just like go through this stuff. This is exactly what we need to learn, and we're good if we know this stuff. But in uni, it's so much different because it's just like it's a key topic, and you can go into heaps of depth, or you could just learn the surface level, and it's a lot of up to your choice or up to your understanding. Where the content they provide you is just the starting point. So I think like wrapping my head around how to make the most of that learning style has definitely been, and like how to effectively learn, how not to like get overwhelmed by how much I could be learning instead, and like keep myself on topic while also like understanding some of it. I think that's the biggest change to get used to from how incredibly structured and like teacher driven VC was in comparison.
Very, very true. Not even just VCE as well. Like,
Yeah,
I feel like all of school,
life before
12,
this.
they just have things handed to you. I mean, everyone will have different experience of school, but particularly how I find, and a few people I've spoken to as well, like you kind of miss things being served up to you on a platter, like, oh, there's this opportunity to like come do debating, come do this. And I guess now we have to seek it out in uni. And one of the great ways you can do that is of course, like the clubs and societies, and the medicine one has its own little kind of network. Are you involved in any of those?
Currently, like I like not involved in the management, but I do really enjoy just like participating in the events they organize, like the case study nights, the like surgical skills workshops, all the extra stuff that they bring in. It's just really good to get a bigger picture, especially I think in the first couple of years of like what medicine can offer in different areas. So yeah, I'm like I guess not involved in running any of them, but I really enjoy the events and the things they set up there.
Sweet. And have you kind of decided what you might be interested in, or like, is there anything you've ruled out, I suppose, when we were talking about that exclusion?
Yeah,
And
I
you're really
think
not sure.
the biggest thing is I do really enjoy like the hands-on clinical aspect to it. So I guess like in a sense, some stuff like pathology, those are like research. Like of course research is good, but having it be my sole focus would definitely not be something I like want to do.
Sure.
So that still leaves so many different options, and I think that's what the next couple of years are going to be all about. Is just getting experience from like all the different fields. Because like you think medicine, or you're locked in, you're railroaded to a path, but along that path, there's so many different branches you can go along. So yeah, I think it'll just be seeing where life goes, what I enjoy.
Awesome. Look, with the transition into uni from school, and are you still living at home, or are you living on campus?
Yes, I'm lucky to be living at home with my family because we're pretty close to Monash anyways. So that's going well for a couple of years.
Yeah, awesome. Even with that transition, like living at home but going to uni, I suppose, I mean, not necessarily at the moment at this stage in the year, students going to be moving into unis, but if someone was watching this and they were going, okay, I'm kind of a bit nervous about going into uni, whether it's medicine or another course as well, what's some advice you might give to that student about, I guess, approaching the whole uni thing, trying to get on top of study, all of that?
Yeah, okay. I think the biggest thing is to like not look at a lot of the time in year 12, you can get stuck within the process of just like, I have to get this stuff done. I have to learn this sort of stuff to like for the assessment, for the exam. And especially with medicine, where the assessments are a very, very small part of the degree. I think the biggest advice I'd give to uni is a bit of a mindset shift where you're learning stuff because you want to do this. Like you've made it, you're into medicine, you're like covering the sort of stuff, or like whatever other degree you're doing as well, but you're in this course that you've wanted, like you're in this path that you're wanting to follow. So learn stuff because you're interested in it. Learn stuff because like you want to understand more. You want to get to know what's going on in this situation. Because if you treat everything as like a checkbox that has to be done, there's so much that'll overwhelm you in uni. I think that's the biggest difference is just like the horizon of how much stuff there is, where if you try to force yourself to get through it, it's not happening. But if you actually approach it with a lot of curiosity, then it's a lot of fun going through this new content.
I would agree with you there. And particularly because in uni, you've picked a degree that hopefully you want to do. So there should be some element, I guess, of curiosity in at least one or two of the subjects. I mean, there's still the drag of assignments and exams, but I like the lesson of curiosity. That's really good. All right, so let's take a sort of a look back now at your year 12, even year 11 as well, a little bit of your VCE. Now you did VCE here in Melbourne. Whereabouts were you at school?
Yes, I was at Hunting Tower School, a smaller school in Mount Waverley there.
Okay, sweet. And in regards to your VCE as a whole, I guess by and large, what was your experience of doing year 12? You graduated with, of course, a perfect score, which is incredible. But what was your experience of VCE as a whole?
Yeah, I'd say honestly, looking back, the biggest way that I'd describe BC is it's a lot of like changes. It's a lot of firsts happening for you, and also a lot of like ending for what's going on. So because of like all this stuff happening, you want to just go in there and give it your all. It's a very, very intense year, that year 12, like even year 11 leading up to it. But with that intense year, if you put your all into it, if you like kind of commit to all the stuff you are doing, I think it can also be filled with some of the highest highs that you're going to experience. So yeah, I'd say that's like kind of the bigger picture overview. It's a really intense year to get through, but when you commit to everything, like you'll come out the other end with, of course, some tough struggles, but also some of the best memories you'll have.
Lots to look forward to, definitely. Well, at least not for me, but for other people.
Yes.
So with year 12, I mean, there's so many, as we were saying before, so many things served up for you, so many opportunities to get involved, and trying to balance that with study is a very difficult thing. And one of the great things about this podcast is I've had so many discussions with people about the different activities they've been doing, whether music or theatre or other things as well. So what did you get involved in your last couple of years of school?
Yeah, look, I really liked being involved in a lot of stuff, honestly, because I found in terms of involvement for high school, I found like the best way to relax, the best way to wind myself down is just like getting into other things I'm interested in life. So I was a big proponent of like public speaking, debating within my school. I really enjoyed a lot of sports, both like kind of individually. I really like swimming as like a way to kind of clear my head, a way to get some exercise in. And also just like a lot of more of the group stuff with like running, cross country, some athletic stuff in my school as well. And it's like, yeah, those two things were kind of the big crutches that I really liked outside of school. And then, of course, just some smaller stuff like music as part of the school orchestra, some like just spending time with friends, going out, getting dinner every now and then, like celebrating the small holidays that we had or that the sack's over, all that sort of stuff. I think just finding that balance between those things, leadership, of course, as well, and school.
Lots to lots to do. Very busy year. I guess my follow up to that is, how did you actually approach the compromise aspect of that and trying to make time for everything? Because naturally, some things are going to be sacrificed at times, not
Yeah.
necessarily globally. But how did you approach that?
Yeah, so look, I think it's very interesting to look at it as like there's so many things you want to do and you have to sacrifice something, because I would often take a very different approach to when I'm thinking about what I want to do. I think about like I have so much time, which gives me the opportunity to explore what I'm interested in. It gives me the chance to commit time to what I want. And that way, like by following what you're interested in, you're not really, instead of sacrificing, it's just that, like every chance that you have is a gift. So I think like, yeah, in terms of how I'd balance all of that, the biggest way to address it, I think, is by like, of course, finding the first step is finding what you're interested in, finding like the things you want to put time into, the things you will be fulfilled doing. That's both like school and outside of school. And the second step is really compartmentalizing, really giving it your all whenever you're doing something. So if you are like chilling with your friends, if you are like doing something like a debating competition, like don't think about the school at the same time. Don't think about anything else and fully commit yourself, immerse yourself in that, and you'll really enjoy the experience. And that also means that because you're not thinking about like all your other commitments at the same time, when it makes time to get to the other one, you can give that focus, you can give that attention without being drained, without having like stressed about it throughout the day because you're actually focusing on something else there. So yeah, I'd say those are like the two parts I'd really, really emphasize for getting through all this sort of stuff is just like finding, of course, what you're interested in, finding what you actually value and brings fulfillment, and then fully committing to it every single time you get down to an activity so that you get a bit of time to do everything you're interested in.
That's great. So did that look like actually scheduling in rest breaks, schedule in dinner with friends and study time, or was it more of a, okay, I'm just going to try and get as much done today as I can and then move on to the next thing?
Yeah, look, I think the scheduling is very much a personal sort of decision on like how much you like to schedule, how much you like to be flexible with yourself. So there'd definitely be weeks where like, okay, stuff is pretty hectic right now. I need to have that like planned in. Tonight I'm going to go through these things. Tomorrow I'm going to like take a break. I've got this like debating competition popping up, so I need to actually like have some days where I'm preparing for that. So like sometimes when life is busy, I think that like at the start of the week having that schedule is really helpful. But then there are other times where it's a little bit more free flowing. It's just like you come home and you decide like, okay, like not too many assessments right now. I'm going to take like 2 hours to get through like my revision for this subject. And then I'm going to spend 2 hours like chilling with my friends on call, like doing something unrelated. So it can be like when your life's a little bit less hectic, you can just go with it. But of course, I think when you do want to do a lot of things, when you do have like a lot of commitments popping up at once, then sometimes like scheduling, the planning, the days can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, look, I really, really like the way you've sort of broken that down into two things of being curious and having those interests, and then really giving your all to them. And like you said before, with your approach to medicine as well, being curious. And I think the curiosity, as you even before like year 11 and 12 as well, you can have curiosity about subjects and see which ones work for you, and then end up in the subjects that you choose for the end. So, sorry, let me rephrase that. Which subjects did you choose for your year 12?
Yeah, I think leading with curiosity for subject selection is a really good take as well, just because my subject selection was something that ends up very, very different to where I'm at for university. I did in year 11, I completed like 3, 4 maths methods and 4 data analytics. And then in year 12, yeah, very different. But then in year 12, I went through kind of chemistry, physics, special maths, and English, of course, as well.
Okay.
So again, like there's a very big discrepancy between like those science, like physics, computing subjects compared to like what I'm doing in biology and medicine right now, biology, psychology, all that. But as I mentioned, I think it was a lot of curiosity where there were other interests of mine as well. And so it was something that like I wanted to explore because I had the chance in year 12 or like in year 11 to go through these subjects. And even though like I'm not doing them later in life, I'm still really happy I got the chance to explore those interests, to delve into those topics as well.
Okay. So, like as a follow up to that, given that it was such a, I guess, math sciencey sort of subject selection, what what did actually end up leaving you with medicine as your degree rather than maybe, I don't know,
Yeah,
engineering or something
look,
else?
I was definitely, look, like even up until year 11, like even the start of year 12, I'd say I was definitely tossing up between like engineering, medicine, so many different ways I could take it. Because I think, again, like approaching my education, it was very much about like, there's so many different things I'm interested in. This, I'm so curious about learning about all these different things. And so it was hard to narrow it down into one specific, like, role, like line my life up into one direction that I have to pick out of year 12. But I think ultimately it was that like I did those subjects because I got a taste of them. I got to understand them throughout school. And from doing those subjects, I learned that like they're fulfilling, but there's an element to them around like the people interactions, around the clinical encounters that you could have in medicine. And so it's a mix of like both doing those subjects and like speaking to other people I knew who'd done medicine, like discussing with my family, like a lot of like family conditions, like people who've had experiences in hospitals. And I think so much of what drew me to medicine is that it had the science based, it had like the depth of learning that all of those fields would have as well. But it also had the like people interactions. It also had the human connection that like throughout my other things, like debating, public speaking, I just really enjoy building that connection with people. And yeah, I think that's ultimately like the added spark that drew me to medicine, even though the content, like knowledge was so different to what I'd studied before, but the underlying principles still really aligned with what I wanted to do.
And it's absolutely is a people career. And um, speaking from experience this year, like every single day, it's having those conversations, building those connections, and seeing in front of you the impact that you can have alongside the, I guess, the intellectual side of things as well. So I guess with your subject selection, did you feel that your selection was informed by that desire to do medicine, or was it something that you, I guess, you'd chosen your subjects and then had that decision dilemma later on?
Yeah, look, I did know from the get-go that medicine was a possibility. Like subject selections happens in year 10, like it happens in year 9, year 10, you pick what you want to do later. And I did know that like I'm tossing up between, there are a lot of different ways I could go. I could go to medicine, I could go to like engineering, I could go to some other sciences. But I think that ultimately like I picked these subjects because there was something that I wanted to explore during school. And so that way I knew kind of like if I didn't do them now, I might not ever get a chance to go into them. And I guess some of the stuff that I did give up because I would have like really wanted the time to do biology. I would have wanted the time to do psychology, but there's only 6 things you can do at once in your school. So I think it was very much a decision of if I had to leave something behind during school, then like those biology, psychology to me were the subjects that I might be able to learn in my life outside of that. I might be able to like learn during university a bit more. Whereas these were the ones which kind of needed the structure, needed the opportunity to discuss a little bit while I would like get into while I was younger.
Okay. So with those subjects and your approach to them, I suppose, like each of them is going to have a different, I guess, study habit, different approach. English is a very different subject to data analytics. I'm sure I don't know much about data analytics, but I'm sure that it's very, very different in terms of your approach to that. So I guess by and large, how did you approach your final year of school and try to maximize your academic success?
Yeah, so I think that a really important part of getting into the final year of school was the fact that I'd had that experience once in year 11. I'd
Mm.
gone through like data analytics, I'd gone through methods in year 11, and both of which are two very different like approaches to studying.
Mm.
Methods, of course, like the maths, very like logical, understand the principles behind it. Data analytics, a lot more like content driven, like
Okay.
covering different topics, understanding like a lot of information about like cybersecurity, about
Sure.
information formatting, all that sort of stuff. So I think that process in year 11, of course, like it gives you the chance to actually see what works. It gives you the chance to understand and formulate like your own personal habits.
Mm.
So that when I was going into year 12, I think the biggest thing with study habits was ultimately just like figuring out what I needed to do to be prepared for every assessment, what I needed to do to understand the content given, and then like breaking down those small individual tasks, finding time to get through each of them and doing each of them properly. So yeah, of course, like you want to find what you want to do and yeah, just then executing, getting through each list there.
Mhm. Was there a particular subject in year 11 that maybe didn't go as well as you wanted it to, or there were some things that you wish you'd done better that you took into year 12?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, look, ultimately, I was happy with my results. I was overjoyed with my results. I didn't expect year 11 to go that well.
Yeah.
But I think what I did learn was that year 11 was a slog to get to that point. It was very
Yeah.
unsustainable if I had took that like approach I did in year 11 and then applied it to like 4 subjects plus UCAT prep in year 12. So the biggest thing I took away from year 11 is the importance of what you need to prioritize, what you need to spend time doing, and what you need to let go of sometimes, what's not the most efficient use of your preparation. And once you do let go of it, like realizing that it's perfectly fine to let go of those aspects of like low yield preparation. You shouldn't regret not getting time to do that sort of stuff. For in my case, that was the things like writing up long notes, writing up like summaries of the situation, putting in a lot of time kind of going through and like reading content in comparison to actually applying it
Mm.
were the biggest habits that I realized like I can't spend time on these when I'm in year 12 and I have so much stuff to run over. And yeah, I never like, and then going through year 12, I think the biggest thing as well as that was just recognizing that I put in the absolute best I can. I do the most effective things. And once I get them done, I don't have regrets. I don't
Mm.
ever feel like I should have done more preparation. I should have done this like small niche thing that could have given me a bit more knowledge because I know that I made the most efficient use of the time that I did have.
So walking out with no regrets. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And I guess in the approach to the time that you did have, now you already mentioned sort of writing those long notes and how that wasn't necessarily the best
Yeah.
use of time. And it's kind of full circle because I remember having a conversation in year 11, sorry, prior to year 11, and my school was like, oh, you might walk out of year 11 with a great score, but we think that the best learning for you is actually the experience of a year 12 subject and the growth that you'll have in the way you approach your studies. And to hear you say that, so many others have said it as well. It is very true. There is a lot of learning you get. And I don't think that some of the things we've done in year 11 were sustainable in year 12, just like, yeah, writing those long notes. So what was the high yield stuff?
Yeah.
If that was the low yield, what was the high yield for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned was, yeah, again, like the importance of applying information straight away. And then after you apply information, like consolidating everything you'd applied to learn from your mistakes.
Mm.
So it would be that the stuff that was really, really helpful in year 11 was going through like learning a topic, throwing yourself into practice questions, throwing yourself into actual written application. But then as well as that written application, using that application before like an assessment to go over like all the past practice questions you've done. I'd be ruthless whenever I'm revising or whenever I'm like marking my own questions. I'd really highlight like, this is where you made those errors. This is the types of things you got wrong
Mm.
so that when it comes to like assessment time, you can go over those again and learn from like refresh your memory of like, these are the things you intrinsically messed up before and you don't want to do it again.
Mm.
You want to be able to change. So yeah, I'd say the stuff that did work most effectively was actually like going through, getting those practice, getting that application done, and then really emphasizing the reflections that you make after each session of those.
Yeah, really consolidating and seeing what went wrong. It's no use to anyone if you just get something wrong and go, "Ah, I'll get it next time," because there's a reason for that. Even if it's a silly mistake, you forgot a negative in a maths, you got to point that out. You got to
Yeah.
actually go through it and understand why you got that wrong. And I found particularly for content subjects that was important, because whether it be wording or whether it be your understanding or the way you've expressed it, it's really important to go through and go, okay, why did I only get 2 out of 3 on this one? What's missing? What can I do next time, and approach that as well. So by and large with year 12 and with, an incredible result and clearly a very formulaic and reflective approach rather to your studies, if you were to give one key tip to a year 12 student or a student as far as year 12 success, what would that tip be?
Yeah, I think I've alluded to it a little bit, but the most important thing is, I think, to really identify what you need to do. What things are the most effective things to get done? What preparation will make you feel ready for the assessments you have? And once you've identified that, find the time, plan out when you're going to get those done, schedule those done so that if you've completed every single one of those, you can walk into the assessment confident. You can walk in knowing that I did the stuff I knew was necessary. I did the stuff that I need to feel prepared. And now that I have got this stuff done, I'm good to go. I can put this in the absolute best version of myself for this assessment, and I can get done as well as I could have done any other place.
How did you manage the exam nerves, SAC nerves, if there was any? I'm sure at time to time there were some anxieties. How did you manage those?
Yeah, no, look, there's always nervousness, but I think you can kind of turn that nervousness into your ally, because so much of the time, you're not going to get stuff done if you had zero pressure on yourself. You're not going to be motivated if there's no deadlines, nothing to get work towards. So I say the biggest thing is really combining that with that opinion or that perspective of no regrets that I mentioned earlier, so that you've put in the practice, you use those nerves during your preparation to actually drive your preparation, because I'm nervous because I'm not ready. I need to do what will make me feel ready. I need to get this stuff done. I need to do these practice questions. I need to use the SACs that my school's given me. I need to after I've done every SAC, I need to go through the SACs and actually notice what were my common mistakes, and then write down how I would create model answers for those in the future. So essentially you do the hard work. And then if you've done that work, if you have scheduled your time, you've put in the commitment to getting that done, when you walk onto the exam, there's a bit of nerves because you're putting it all together, but you know everything. Everything is up here because you've put in the time for it.
Yeah.
So you walk in confident in yourself with justified confidence is the biggest thing.
Justified confidence, yep. I think the 2 biggest sources of anxiety that I would have found in year 12 was, number one, if the assessment was important, naturally, even if you're prepared, you're like, oh, I really want this to go well. Please let it be a good assessment. Even, exams can be up to 70% of your entire grade. And even if you've prepared it for hours and hours and hours and hours, you're still going to be nervous about that. But like you said, the other one is not being prepared. And it's a really good lesson in ensuring that you are prepared, actually taking stock and going, all right, what do I need to know? How can I put in some good steps, some good processes and skills to try and get on top of that content, and then walk into that exam with justified confidence, feeling as good as you possibly can to try and do well. So that, really, really good. I guess in your year 12, you mentioned already 4 subjects, but there was something else that was happening in year 12 too. So if we were to talk about the UCAT a little bit now, we've talked about the UCAT quite a lot on this channel as well, and sort of the experiences that everyone's had with it, whether it be doing a gap year because they weren't happy, whether it be getting a score that, still ended up being okay, but wasn't what they wanted, actually doing a lot better than they expected. So what was your experience of your UCAT?
Yeah, look, I think that I went into the UCAT knowing very little. I started preparation in December and I was clueless. I'd heard people say that 3,000 up based on the old scoring system was a solid score.
Yes.
This is what you need, all this sort of stuff. But I didn't really know what was expected. I didn't know what was great. But I think the one thing that was a constant throughout my UCAT prep was that I never had a goal score that I wanted to hit. I never had this benchmark I want to be at. I just wanted to continuously prepare so that it's the best version of myself on exam day. I wanted to I really enjoyed, I think this is the other thing that it was in UCAT prep, it was in all my other prep as well. But I think the key to actual success is driving yourself to be the best version of yourself, the best capabilities that you can achieve, rather than having that one score you want to hit. And then once you hit that, you're good, you're happy. This is what I'll need to get to be happy. Instead of that, just working towards what can I actually do in this situation? So what am I capable of? And I think that's where UCAT prep for me was a lot of iteration, a lot of do the practice questions, learn from them, find the mistakes, reflect on those, and then try again, do another mock exam while keeping those mistakes in mind. because that process of iteration just like continuously allowed me to improve. It allowed me to like get closer and closer to that capacity that I actually had. Because like everyone has so much capacity to work towards stuff, but you just have to give yourself the time to learn, to slowly develop it. And yeah, ultimately, I think that that showed itself on exam day because I just kept on reaching higher. I never would have dreamed that I would hit that sort of score if you asked me in December. Like I'd be like, 3,100 sounds absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just continuously pushing myself to grow as you get towards the exam, as you learn what you're capable of. You'll have some successes. And instead of using those successes to feel like complacent or confident, use them to inspire yourself to reach even higher.
Ethan actually used a very good word in his description of his UCAT prep and was being dissatisfied. And I suppose it's similar in the way of being like, okay, even though I've got this great score that I'm getting in my mocks or something, you know, I'm progressively just trying to push for more. And I think that's such a good takeaway. And I guess in the way that you're approaching a UCAT, you spoke so well about your year 12 and how you reflected and went through carefully and systematically looked at the mistakes that you made. I'm guessing that that was carrying over quite well to the UCAT, but what did that actively look like? Because so many students find, and I found this in my experience as well, that even if you know the mistake you made, you don't really know how to fix that mistake. So how did you go through? How did you make those improvements?
Yeah, so I think that of course the biggest difference between like the UCAT and year 12 is that there isn't a content knowledge base. There isn't like somewhere you can go to learn everything, somewhere you can go that if I study this, I'm good. That just doesn't exist for the UCAT because it's so much more focused on the skills individually. So how that reflects our practice is that we have to actually think about these like steps. We have to think about the skills that are needed and how we can train them in our own preparation. So yeah, what that would mean is that if I notice like I'm making this mistake, I'm making this question wrong, you think about like whether it's a tutor giving you a strategy, whether it's like you reflecting and thinking, how can I change my approach? But you find a habit, you find a way of thinking that will avoid that mistake. And then you force yourself to apply that. It won't come like naturally. The first couple, like I can say, I want to avoid like making errors in QR. I want to avoid forgetting about unit conversions by just reminding myself every time there is a geometry question. But like the first time you see a geometry question, you're not going to remember that. But by repetition of these skills, these strategies, these like ways of thinking, that's how you like continuously practice while reinforcing those, while focusing on improving those. That's how you're going to improve on the UCAT, I'd say, is the most important thing. So yeah, really changing up your attitude from like school, which is very, very content focused, towards the actual like mindsets, towards like the flow of your logical steps whenever you approach a question is the most important thing.
And it is in essence an exam that's designed to, I guess, not be able to be studied is the principle behind it. No, it's such a good lesson in motivation shift, and the exam itself is so different to any VCE exams as well. So having that experience and going, okay, early on, I'm going to change the way I think about it, change the way I think about my preparation too. Now you were a student of contours as well in the UCAT program. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about how that supported you in your growth and your journey as well.
Yeah, look, I think there's like kind of three key parts to where like being a student in Contour really, really helpfully you get for me. And the first of those is ultimately just like the structure, getting like an information about like what the UCAT is, what exactly is going on. Because I came in knowing like absolutely nothing about what the UCAT was. And that's so common as well. Because like a lot of the time, like schools won't give you too much information. You have to go out and look for it yourself. And so many students can like miss the importance of how significant this exam is to medical entry. So yeah, I think just the structure, like kind of starting practice early, like with this sort of stuff to practice, this is, and like what exactly the UCAT is, I'd say that's the first like really helpful thing. The second thing is honestly just like the mentorship, the experiences and the advice from it, because like I would harass Ramad a lot of the time. I would just like constantly ask him questions about like his own preparation, how he approached it, and like what habits and things he did. Because I think that whenever you want to like achieve a goal, whenever you're aiming for something, finding someone who's gone through that experience, finding someone who like has similar interests to you, that's really, really helpful to hear from them, both like what it's like on the other side as well as, again, yeah, like what kind of things they did. And even if you don't do the same stuff, you can just like notice what like this worked for them. I might try a variation of it, or I need to find, like it can help you find what works for you itself. And yeah, I think the third thing is I talked so much about how like mindset and strategy was the key thing. And that's something that was very largely driven by Contour's advice because yes, they so strongly emphasize like what exactly is going on with the exam. We like how to actually approach this by changing a strategy, by changing a mindset, by changing the thought process that you have. And yeah, ultimately I found that super effective on testing, like on learning for this test that is supposed to be like unlearnable, that's supposed to be not something you can improve based on innate talent, but instead, like there are these sorts of things that you can actually work towards to improve.
Mm. And for a student who's thinking about sitting the UCAT as well, naturally there are going to be a lot of anxieties around that, and also particularly, yeah, if, like you said, if you're not sure what the UCAT is, how important it is, I suppose if you were to talk to your past self or even talk to another student as well about the most important things to know about the UCAT, what do you think would be some things that you might say?
Yeah, look, in terms of what to know about it, I'd say two key things again here. One, of course, is just how important it is. Like a lot of universities, it's weighted as much as your year 12. It's weighted, or it might be like half of your year 12. But if you still think about it, like year 12, your ATAR is something you've been building up for essentially 6 years of high school. And this one exam can come in and be potentially as impactful as that.
Mm.
So yeah, say first off is, of course, just how significant it can be if what you're looking to do is like medicine or dentistry. And the second thing I'd say is that the UCAT is a very structured, rigid thing where before I talked a lot about how, like in high school, you want to approach stuff with curiosity. You want to do stuff that you're interested in, find passion. But with the UCAT, like if you want to do medicine, there might be parts of the UCAT you just really don't like. They don't sit with you. For me, that was VR very often,
Yep.
but you just got to like get up and deal with it sometimes. So yeah, it's in your preparation, really finding those errors because of the way the exam works. If you're not good at something, you have the biggest capacity to actually improve your score by tackling that specifically. The same, though it will be hard, it will be confronting, putting time into refining that will yield you so much more than just like perfecting something that you're already strong at. So yeah, it is a very different mindset where a lot of the time in high school, like the way VC is structured, you have like top subjects, you have bottom subjects, you can like kind of lean into your strengths a little bit. But with the UCAT, it forces you to be all rounded in that situation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a tremendous piece of advice. And my goodness, you've given so many, so many good pieces of advice. And if I was sitting my UCAT again, hearing all of those different things would really help me with not only the skills that I'm working on, but also the mindset as well. I suppose if you had to boil it down to one key tip for the UCAT, whether it be actually sitting it or approaching it, one key tip for the UCAT, what would that tip be?
Look, I think that ultimately it's very, very easy to overcomplicate the UCAT. It's very easy to get like lost in the weeds of all the different advice people give, all the different things you can do. But when you boil it down to the very basics, I'd say the one tip, the one most important thing is to actually make sure you learn from your practice. Make sure that when you're reflecting, you're able to identify like what these issues are, what the things you're struggling with are, what the common problems are. Never brush aside an issue. Like never say that I'll get this right on exam day. Oh, I know how to do this question. I just a careless mistake. I missed something. Find every error and just learn from those mistakes, reinforce them, practice with a specific focus to address them. And yeah, if you keep on doing that, you'll keep on improving. It might be slow sometimes, it might be fast sometimes, but you'll keep on making progress towards hitting your maximum capacity, hitting what you're capable of.
That's a sensational piece of advice. To finish off our discussion about medical entry and your journey getting into Monash as well, with the last component of medical entry being the interviews, naturally with the scores that you got, I'm sure you had a very busy interview period. So tell me a little bit about the offers you got, what your experience of preparing for those interviews were.
Yeah, look, a little while ago now, but I definitely did have, like, I took the chance of, like, I wanted to do medicine. At this point, I was committed. I applied, like, everywhere interstate. I applied Monash, all the different universities, and I did have packed with quite a few interviews.
Mhm.
Now, I think that the biggest thing for interview preparation, of course, were like, two parts to it, of course. Like, one is, like, practicing responses, like, honing my skills, like, getting used to stuff. But I think the second part that was, like, really helpful was by having like all these different interviews, by having like mock interviews with like tutors or just like
Mhm.
practicing things with friends, all these opportunities to really get into an interview setting and like speak those responses.
Mm.
Because ultimately, like the two most important parts to the interview, I think, are like who you are, how you can like mold yourself, and then how you present that in the interview setting. It's so easy to get lost in the nerves, get lost in like the nervousness when you're looking at a screen. There are things that like they look good on like you talk normally, but they don't really translate to screen, all that sort of stuff. So that final presentation where like actually doing like the interviews, some of the earlier interviews, I was lucky that Monash was one of my last ones. So I had a couple of chances to like, I guess, prepare with this like end goal in mind because it was the one that I wanted, I wanted the most. But yeah, ultimately, I think those opportunities to prepare, whether it's those interviews, whether it's like practicing with friends, but recognize like how I present myself, fine tune those aspects was the most important part of it.
I really like the way that you've separated out your character versus how you present yourself, because there is a distinction there. And in those moments of nervousness or freezing up and things, it can be very easy to lose the fact that maybe you're an excellent public speaker, you're an excellent sort of model for a medical student, but if you can't actually communicate that, you can't present yourself well. Yeah, I really do like that distinction a lot. And I suppose in approaching each of those interviews as well, some of them are going to be online, some of them will be in an MMI sort of format, some of them will be panel, some of them will be in person as well. So actually tailoring to each of those different interviews is going to be a challenge too. So how did you go about preparing for those interviews?
Yeah, look, I think that it's again like very easy to get lost in interview preparation. Ultimately, there's the paths to the interview are like how you deal with situations for the most part. Like for the more MMI ones, that's the only part. But some of them, like they'll ask you all the questions, but the main thing that a lot of them are gonna ask you is like how you deal with certain situations.
Yes.
So I think the first step for interview preparation is always like being able to grapple with that. Think of ideas, think of ways, like, and then present your ideas on the spot. And that is one of the things that I think takes the longest to hone. So I was lucky where I had like a lot of debating experience. I had some public speaking experience. But even if you don't have that, just like discussing like tough topics with your friends, like with your family at the dinner table, talking about like the news, whatever's happening right now. It doesn't have to be in the specific like format of the thing they'll ask you in the MMI, but just the approach of like how to think about a situation, think about a problem, and articulate your thoughts on it in a methodical manner. I think that's just like something that you can build in the background very, very easily.
Yes.
And it's a skill that'll serve you in life a lot as well. But so yeah, I think look like I tried to build that up through like the public speaking, through the general stuff in my life as well. And then, yeah, the second and third part are, of course, interview preparation is just like fine tuning all of that thinking to the medical setting, with ethics they use, the values they'll have, like the approaches for common situations, common dilemmas, all that sort of stuff. Like, honestly, that's the easy part. It takes like a week or two. You learn all this content and you don't have any exams anymore. You're chill. You can just like delve into it a lot. And so I think that was pretty straightforward. And yeah, the final piece, as you mentioned, is then how you present that for the interview itself, where like recording yourself, actually doing practice, whether it's with a friend, if everyone else is busy, just like looking at your laptop camera, talking for a little bit, and then watching back that recording is incredibly useful because there's so many things you just don't notice when you're the one speaking. But yeah, it's like that final way is just like noticing like your speaking habits, your presentation, and how you can like polish that up and change it so that you get to the interview itself.
That was definitely one of the biggest aspects of my interview preparation back in the day was sitting there getting uncomfortable and then getting comfortable with the fact that you're recording yourself, watching yourself back, having a bit of a, oh my goodness, this is awful. I hate the sound of my own voice. But you do notice things when you actually do look at your mannerisms and the hand gestures you're using. I mean, there's all sorts of things you do notice. It's very important to do. But like you said, having an external set of eyes is really good too. Having some information from other people too. You mentioned in year 12 you did debating as well. Now, I'm interested to hear, do you feel like that contributed to your interview success?
Yeah, look, I think that it's a very different scenario in that, like with debating, with public speaking, like you have a lot of time beforehand to prep your ideas.
Of course.
But there are like some things you bring up on the spot. There are like responses. There is that thought process in it. I think that it was the most useful part of it was my ability to articulate my thoughts that helped with. My just like the ability to like come up with ideas and then like say them in a way that some of the logic, some of the structure helped a lot. But these are like the types of things that you can learn a lot of the time. You can like still work through. So you don't need to like be worried if you're not doing that sort of stuff. But I do think that it's a small advantage. It's like one like thing that you don't have to worry about a little bit when it comes to interview preparation because of the background and the experience that you've got before.
Yeah, having that experience formulating ideas and even actually communicating them as well, because like we were saying, it's one thing to think about them and have the knowledge, but actually communicating it's really important too. So with these interviews you're having, 5, 6, 7, however many you did, that's a very busy time. And naturally, having just finished your 12, you haven't got any exams, but it's sort of a time where you want to be relaxing. And I guess, how did you go about maximizing that time while also giving yourself the time to have a break and refresh and be kind of able to function.
Yeah, look, like there's so much stuff in that break where everyone's done with exams. You want to like go all out, you want to chill, relax. And to an extent, I did. Like I'd spent a lot of time just like enjoying the company of my friends, enjoying like everyone's freedom in a sense from the exams and from the studies we've been doing over the last few years. But at the same time, it's just like dedicate a small amount of day to interview preparation, 1, 2 hours. That can be as much as it takes. Do that for 2, 3 weeks and you'll know the basics. Like one day you focus on like learning a little bit of the content, the medical ethics, all those sorts of things. The next day, like do a couple practice responses, record yourself and look back over it. So just like give it a small amount of time, maybe at night, maybe in the mornings, but just allocate that like small habit for yourself. Get it done. And the rest of the time, carefree, enjoy, like go all out, enjoy that break because you have earned it.
You spoke so highly before in year 12 and with the UCAT too about this reflective process, about looking at the way that you interview or do studies as well, and systematically going through that to make sure you don't make those mistakes. Now, the interview is very different, but did you apply that same mindset, that same approach to the interviews as well?
I think that again, like the key difference is that with the interview, it's like a performance. It's like something you present to an extent. So the biggest change you want to make is that in the other ones, it's all about the mindset, it's all about the thinking. But here it's all about like the physicality of the habits you have, the way you speak, all that sort of stuff. So you want to turn it so that like you're going to be nervous, you're going to be anxious in this interview setting. It's not going to be like your best speaking in any way, shape, or form, but you want to make it so that your baseline or your natural way of speaking when you are nervous, what you fall back on is still presentable. So I'd say, yeah, the biggest part of interview preparation, it's still constant reflection. It's still like recording yourself, giving yourself constant feedback. But the goal of the feedback is to turn your natural self, to turn like the way you speak when you are nervous into something that's still fluent, something that still gets those ideas across. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's about like turning all these things into habits for yourself so that when you are nervous, you don't forget them. You still have them as the way that you present as like part of you instead of something you're consciously thinking about in the interview setting.
Yes, establish a strong baseline and have those be really good baseline skills. One of the encouragements I often will offer to students is as well with the interview being in an MMI format, that is, even if you've given one of the worst stations that you possibly could have, the next station, the next interviewer hasn't met you yet, and having that discipline and opportunity to go, okay, that last one wasn't great, but I'm going to move on and do the next one. And return to that baseline, which is established, is going to be really, really good for that. I suppose with your interview as well, you were involved in the Contour interview course, and asking the same question as I did with the UCAT, how was that helpful in your interview preparation?
Yeah, look, I think again, like thanks to you for a lot of that because like you were my interview mentor. You were giving me a lot of the good advice that I appreciated. But the biggest thing from that, of course, was that it streamlined a lot of the process on the content knowledge side of it, where a lot of structure, lessons, etc. Like it taught you about the method, medical ethics, ways to structure responses, all those sorts of things. And then I think the highest yield thing was, of course, like the specific feedback, the practice MMIs, the like video responses we could record and send, the times I sent you like so many things to feedback. But yeah, I think that that opportunity to have someone else like listen to you and give you some tips on what to change, give you someone who's like gone through this experience before, especially. And yeah, like ultimately that feedback, like constantly taking on that feedback and then trying to give another response while I keep that in mind, while I repeat it and then turn it into a habit, as I mentioned earlier, is the most important thing to my preparation. So like whether it's part of the Contour course or whether like you have a couple of friends preparing for the interview, whether you have like some other people who've like gone through this process before, yeah, the biggest thing is of course like kind of seeking that advice, seeking the tips from other people who watch you present.
The way that I always like to think about the interview, you brought out something very interesting, is as we were saying before, that baseline skills, but each individual, let's say we're trialing, using some hand gestures, or you've been forgetting to actually engage well with the camera, or maybe you've been using lots of filler words, actually taking that and really concentrating on that. And the more you practice that, the more you concentrate at that will then become your baseline. You can sort of
Yeah.
add it to your repertoire in that baseline sense, and then build on another skill and another skill and another skill and progressively improve on them. And then 3 weeks down the track, you'll actually look back and go, oh, wait a second, that thing that was an issue is now my baseline skill, which is
Yeah.
great. Now you already sort of referenced it as one key tip, but I guess boiling down your interview experience, boiling down your approach to whether it be MMIs, panel interviews, medical interviews, or interviews in general as well. What's one thing that you think every student needs to know about interviews?
Yeah, look, I think that as we've talked about so much before, condensing it down into you want to make it so that under the nerves, when there's all the pressure, what you resort to is still what you want to present.
Mm.
You don't want to make it so that you're constantly thinking about, you're constantly having to remind yourself, like, keep your eye contact with the screen, don't speak too fast, make sure you articulate every word, make sure that you have structure to your ideas. If you're thinking about all these while you're responding, like, you can't do that and think about ideas to say and be worried about the exact interview at the same time.
Yes.
So you need to make it so that those natural things, by practice, by actually reflecting on yourself, make it so that those aspects of your presentation become your natural habit, become the way that you speak, so that it's one less thing to worry about when you're in that situation. And it's so achievable when you actually like listen to practice. I think, as of course I was a student when I was preparing for my interviews, but then last year I got the opportunity to be a mock interviewer as well. So I think that gave me a lot of new perspective of giving students advice. And I think one of the most fulfilling parts of that was actually seeing how many students, when I like spoke to them the first time, I gave them some advice. And then when they come in for another mock interview, they've actually applied that. They've improved so much from their first situation. And yeah, I think that process of turning what was something that you struggled with into a habit, into something that you just do without thinking about it, is the most important part.
All right. Well, to wrap up our conversation for today, we've gone through some wonderful things about your year 12, about the UCAT, and also your interview experience as well, which is wonderfully culminated in you actually being a student at Monash as well. So by and large, being a successful student, being a successful person in medical school as well, what would be some advice you would give to a student who's interested in going into university, who's thinking about actually pursuing that tertiary study? What's the advice that you would give in approaching that?
I think in terms of your preparation, your goals, like getting ready for whatever like tasks you have to complete to get towards your goals, I think the biggest thing is to, again, like have everything that you have and fully commit yourself to it. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, prepare with no regrets. And when tying it all together, what this means is that you just, whenever you're working towards something, it means something to you. You're driven to work towards it and you push yourself until you can achieve the absolute best that you could in that area. So yeah, I think that it's very easy to take on, like life has so many different things you can do, right? It's very easy to take on all these different things. It's very easy to like get lost in how much possibility there is. But once you pick out those possibilities, you just give it your all, you commit yourself to getting those things done. And I think that that approach to it is the most important part of like whether you're in year 12, whether you're in university, trying to like pick out what to study, what to focus on. But I think that's the most important like way to approach situations, is just to give it your all. And then whatever happens on the other end, it happens, but you know that like whatever did happen, you gave it the best shot you could have. There's nothing you could have changed to live better with it.
And you also learn a whole lot along the way as well. Like even, giving your all to something, even if it's not necessarily where you're going to end up, you've tried that, you've learned something a little bit more. And it's one of the great things about school that there's opportunities available to try, the debating and leadership extracurriculars as well. And moving into uni, yes, it's more self-driven. Yes, it's more, I have to go out of my way to seek out these things, but trying things, giving them 100%, as you said, you're never going to regret that.
Yeah.
Never regret that.
And I think that also, because like the biggest connection, it's very easy to lose sight of, is that when you do that, also don't regret the time you spend relaxing, the time you spend like with your companions, with your friends, with your family. And because like ultimately that is another part of your life. It's another part you want to commit to. It's another part you want to enjoy. So the time you spent there is never time wasted. It's always just another aspect of something you need in your life, something that you should like really value throughout your prep, whatever else you're committing to as well. So yeah, I think whenever you like, if you just think about everything that you are doing, you ensure that you actually value what you are doing, then you'll be able to commit yourself to it. You'll be able to get stuff done and you'll be able to achieve like so much more than you can expect.
All right. Well, Pranav, to wrap up our conversation for today, being a student in medical school now in your second year, we're nearing the end of semester 2, nearly.
Halfway through, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Still, I lose track with hospital. So I know school's ending term 1. So you've got, real placement coming up. That's really, really exciting. and working at Contour as well. There's lots of things happening. I suppose what are you most looking forward to in the next 6 months or going forward?
Yeah, look, I think that there's a lot of opportunities, and I'm really enjoying university right now. I'm really enjoying like delving into the second year is very structured on like different systems, different parts of the body, and kind of learning all the facets of it together between the anatomy, the physiology, the medications used, the different illnesses that occur. So I think I'm really enjoying working through that and just like delving into the understanding of those areas. There's like so much depth to explore. And of course, you mentioned earlier, it's like the rural placement, the actual ability to kind of go from a student in a classroom to actually feeling like a doctor because we're like getting to be in these situations as well. That's definitely a highlight of what I'm looking forward to. So, yeah, I'm kind of just seeing where life takes me, continuing to learn, continuing to like just strive to improve my skills in every possible area that I can enjoy, and just keep on approaching stuff with curiosity as I go.
Prav, you are a role model for both students and those who aren't students as well. And it has been so great today to delve into all the things that make you tick and that have led to your incredible success so far. So thank you so much for joining me and for having this conversation. I'm really, really excited to see the impact that has, and if even one student watching this gets something from your advice, then that is just sensational. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for kind of accommodating this. And it's been a great experience kind of like coming back, talking, discussing, and hearing from this end of it. So I also just wanted to ask kind of like, what are you looking forward to? How's the hospital placement experience going right now?
So it has been definitely a big change for me. So with the two preclinical years that we've talked about it, particularly at Monash at least, it's very uni-based classes, and you, like any other degree, you're going to the Clayton campus and things. But delving into the hospital, it's completely changed the way that I learn, what my day-to-day looks like, and I'm actually moving rotations on Monday, so I'm heading off to surgery to start that. So that'll be very different too. The biggest thing for me, I think, with placement has been actually facing sort of the environment with patients and actively seeing the learning that you've done over the past couple of years, and the active learning as well being applied to patient care. And it is, I cannot understate the privilege that it is to actually be involved in their care, to be a member of the medical team, which the doctors welcome in. And yeah, it's truly is something for you to look forward to. And if anyone else has that opportunity as well, for them to look forward to as well.
Yeah, look, definitely looking forward to going through that next year as well. Sounds like a great step into like experiencing kind of like the dream, the job that we all signed up for in this degree.
Yeah, it's also a lot of fun too. And the team that you are involved in at the hospital, they are very much your friends. And it is an encouragement I would give to any medical student or someone who's on placement, nurses, other health specialties too. Just putting yourself out there, introducing yourself, getting involved. You will never regret that.